Hi everyone, welcome to the Sip and Spin. I am the Tipsy Spinster and happy January. I'm not going to say Happy New Year because there are actually two New Years in the month of January. One is the Gregorian New Year and the other is the Chinese New Year. Now, for the Gregorian New Year, which happens on January 1st, this is an opportunity for people to make New Year's resolutions. I used to do that, and then I was very disappointed in myself when those resolutions fell apart. So I did a little bit of research, and I discovered that a resolution is very different from an intention. And over the last few years, I have set New Year's intentions. A resolution is more quantitative, it's a little bit harder and more defined, whereas an intention is softer, it's qualitative, and it's something that you can revisit throughout the course of the year. One of the intentions that I set for myself this year is to minimize the waste as much as I possibly can, especially with I'm sewing. I have realized that as I make garments and aprons, I have this huge pile of fabric that I knew that I didn't want to throw away because I knew that there would be a use for it. So this is my year to find something to do with all of that fabric. And if you stay tuned, I'm going to share with you a couple projects that you can make using fabric scraps that you might have around the house or minimal amounts of fabric. The other big event in January is Distaff Day, and I have two Distaffs in front of me. Distaffs are kind of neat gadgets, and my little sister is the one who she defined it perfectly for me. She said, so wait, let me get this right. A distaff is nothing more than it's basically a place to hold your pre-spun fiber. A distaff is a pre-spun fiber organizer. And I love that because that's exactly what it is. And so I wanted to showcase a couple wheels because if you look back through some of my other episodes where I talk about Distaff Day, I talk about wrist distaffs and making them more in the vein of using them with drop spindles or support spindles. I don't believe I've ever done one where I've showcased a distaff on one of my spinning wheels. And so for today's episode, I'm going to talk about two Kromsky wheels. Now, the fiber that I have charged on both of my distaffs is the same. I actually took the time off this year, the 12 days from Christmas to January 7th. That's the 12 days of Christmas. And that was traditionally when women stopped spinning. And I actually did. It was hard. I cannot tell you how many times I went to go pick up a spindle or to sit down at my spinning wheel and I was like, no, wait, I said that I was going to take the time off. It was really hard to take 12 days off from spinning. I found myself wandering around and preparing fiber. And so for today's episode, I put together a huge amount of fiber. If you followed me on Instagram, I put together a little bit of a quick showing of blending these fibers. It's a combination of a lot of different fibers that I have aptly named champagne, chocolate, and strawberries because I thought it would be a fun way to celebrate getting back into spinning this year. So let's get started in talking about distaffs for spinning wheels. So the first wheel that I'm going to demonstrate this on, this is the Kromsky mazurka, and it is a Polish style castle wheel. Now, I know some of you, before you start chiming in on the comments section, I did a little bit of research between the difference between the definitions for a castle wheel and an upright wheel. According to Enid Anderson's book that was published in 1987, a castle wheel is a wheel where the flyer, which is this part right here, the flyer sits below the wheel. So it's built. A lot of the castle wheels are square. They're traditionally Irish or Scottish, and the wheel sits above the flyer. In a later book, which is Spinning Wheels and Accessories, and this one was published in 2004, the terms blended and became a little bit more synonymous. Castle and upright both are terms that are being used interchangeably. When I went on the Kromski website, the company that makes this wheel, they do refer to this wheel as a Polish style castle wheel. This was the first wheel in Kromski's line, and as you can see, it's adorable. It's a single treadle, double drive, which means it has one drive band going around the flyer and the bobbin. It's tiny, it's very tiny, and it is adorable. The distaff, however, sits so close to the flyer that it is a little bit of a challenge. Distaffs traditionally are used to hold flax because you need to get the flax on. You're going to be wetting your fingers, so it's nice to have all of your fiber separate from your hands so you're not managing getting it wet, pulling it out, but it can hold any kind of fiber. So there is a little bit of flax in here. I felt that I needed to blend a little bit of flax in here just for the sake of Distaff Day. The idea is, though, that your fiber is going from the distaff. You're handling it as little as possible as it moves through the orifice hook onto the spindle. Now this one was a little bit tricky to set up, and I am not going to share with you the outtakes. I realized the way this is set up, it could be located on either side, but if you'll notice the tines on my bobbin, you'd absolutely want them facing away so they don't catch on the fiber, which is what was happening when I was going this way. It was catching on the fiber and it was making an absolute mess. So if you have a distaff that is this close, I've also got tulle on here to secure it in order to keep it from flying and getting caught on there as well. As much as I love the idea of the distaff on my mazurka, honestly, it's more decorative than functional. That being said, I'm going to slide the mazurka over. And the next wheel that Kromski made was the minstrel. And as you can see, it is substantially larger. It is a double treadle. It has a distaff that makes sense. It's further away from the bobbin, so it makes it a lot easier to work with in terms of getting the fiber from the distaff onto the bobbin as I spin. And it is actually really quite handy. Distaffs are a good fiber management tool. I think that's probably the easiest way to say that. And the nice thing is, because it's attached, if I'm going to see how fine I'm spinning with my spinner's control card, I can bring this back. And then grab my spinner's control card in terms of seeing. Now, as I was originally filming this episode, my apron it's so busy. There's so much happening on it. And I realized that trying to see the fiber, the angle of the twist, how thin or thick it was a little bit of a challenge. So I made, using fabric scraps, and this is the other New Year. This year is the year of the rabbit in the Chinese New Year, which happens towards the end of January. And so I made a spinner's cloth, and that's all it is. It's just a little cloth, but this is what's so great. When I go to pull the fiber out, it's so much easier to see against the dark single background. So I can see my finished yarn. I'll be able to see what my angle of twist is going to be, as well as my wraps per inch, which is pretty consistent. And there's pockets, so I can put my spinner's control card in there. Now, both Kromsky wheels, all of the Kromsky wheels, they have a place for your orifice hook. But if you had a wheel and you didn't have a spot for your orifice hook, you could put your orifice hook in the pocket. If you didn't have a place to put oil for your wheel, I wouldn't put it next to those things. I'd put it in a separate pocket, but you could put it in a separate pocket. For this wheel, my cap for my Distaff, I didn't have any place to put it. I can put it in a pocket. So I love pockets. I really do. Do you need to make pockets on a spinning cloth? No, absolutely not, but they sure are handy to have. It is black on one side, but if I'm wearing something that is dark, if I flip it over, it is white on the other side, which is amazing. This is my new favorite thing, and I would love to show you how to make one of these. So stay tuned. I will be right back, and I will share with you how you can make your own spinning cloth. The second New Year of January is the Chinese New Year, and this year it is the year of the rabbit. So in honor of that, I mixed up a quick cocktail called the White Rabbit. I'm actually not going to give you the recipe on this one because there are so many recipes out there. So just do a quick search for White Rabbit cocktail. For mine, because I have discovered the benefits of blending with oat milk, there are so many variations on this one. So for this particular cocktail, it is just oat milk, vanilla brandy, Disaronno, and a little creme de violette with nutmeg and chocolate, which truly makes for a decadent White Rabbit. Oh, the chocolate on top is amazing. Okay, so I'm going to share two options to use up some of the fabric scraps that you might have lying around, or if you just want a simple sewing project. If you go back through some of my other episodes, one of the sewing projects that I did a while ago was for a simple apron where you just need to measure and cut fabric, and that was pretty close. It was a minimal waste. It wasn't a zero waste. And as much as I would love to do zero waste sewing, I've yet to be able to finagle that. I have done a pretty good job with these two projects that I'm going to share with you on this episode of constructing or using everything in order to do minimal waste sewing. And the little bits that I have left over, I am going to hang on to and use them for stuffing all of the gnomes that I make. So those are probably all of the waste fabric scraps that I have that are too small to do anything with. Those are probably going to end up inside hand knit gnomes. And if you follow me on Instagram, you'll see that I do enjoy knitting gnomes every year. So the first project that I'm going to recommend is the Frankie project bag by Cool Stitches, and I'll put the link on how you can purchase that in the description. Here are two samples of it. One of the things that I love about this pattern is it's easily adaptable. So when you get the PDF, you'll get the instructions for how to measure out your fabric, and you've got choices. I personally like having paper patterns. So I took the instructions and I did lots of measuring, and then I measured again. So I have a small project bag here that is fully lined, which I really love. This is just using 2 fat quarters that were left over from my mask making adventures. And so now I'm going to start using up all of the fat quarters and fabric that I had when I was making masks for pretty much everything. It's just a cute little drawstring bag. One of the things that I really love about this pattern is the fact that it has the flat bottom. I like that a lot in a project bag. And this is the actual size of the Frankie project bag. And for this one, as you can see, I took the scraps from the dress that I'm wearing as well as from some of the other projects that I did. And I now have a bag that matches my dress, which I really like. And one of the other things that I like about this bag, it's gonna be hard to see, but if you look inside, wait, let me see if I can do it. I think I can do it this way. It is, one, it's fully lined, which was so easy to do, and once again, there's pockets. I love pockets. I so love pockets. So there are a bunch of different sized pockets for this project bag. I absolutely love it. So this is my llama project bag with pockets. I have no idea what I'm going to be using it for. I'm still learning how to do drawstrings. The drawstrings are the part that totally elude me. The squares are 4-inch squares. So I'm going to talk a little bit about measuring squares. As I have been cutting fabric down, I have templates for my squares. I have a 2.5, 3.5, and 4.5 inch square piece of paper that I am using for templates to build quilting, and that's what I did with the bunny bag that I have here. You'll see I've just got one solid piece of fabric on this one, and then I have squares on this one, and I was worried that if I put fiber in here it would stick, so I did, I'll turn this inside out for just a second. This is lined with fusible interfacing. It's an incredibly lightweight fusible interfacing for shirt fabric. It was so inexpensive, and I got it in both white and black, and it just sort of seals everything in. So the spinner's cloth is not lined in any way, but for that particular one, so you can see it's not lined, but where I've done the quilt squares, I did put the fusible interfacing on the back, and I love that it all just tucks in quite nicely. So if you would like to make your own spinner's cloth, this is what you'll need. You'll need 1 yard of 42-inch wide black and white fabric. I opted for a cotton poly blend because it was a little bit less expensive. This was $1.99 a yard, and I wanted to be as cost effective and efficient as I possibly could. So with this 1 yard of fabric, I will be able to get 4 spinner's cloths. Now that's going to change if you want to make them wider. I made these 10.5 inches wide by 36 inches long. Now I've played back and forth. I went back and forth with making some a little bit wider and some a little bit narrower, and I sent out tests to a couple other spinning friends of mine, and they both agreed that they liked the narrower version a little bit better. So 10.5 inches wide by 36 inches long. And then when it comes to the pocket, of course, you'll just need a piece of fabric that is 10.5 inches wide and then as deep as you want your pocket to be. For this particular one, I went with 7 inches. So it's 10.5 inches wide by 7 inches deep, or no, 10.5 inches long by 7.5 inches wide. Now, this fabric is from Spoonflower. Spoonflower fat quarters are a little bit bigger than traditional fat quarters, I've discovered. This fabric is from Unique Astrid, and I loved it because it had the sheep on it. So my white side will have the sheep on it, and then the black side will have my llamas on it. Once you cut the pocket, you'll just need to make sure that you finish your top edge. There's 2 ways to finish your top edge. This one, I just did a rolled edge, but for this one, I used a bias tape edging so I could put my little tag on there as well. And I want to talk a little bit about making your own bias tape. Again, minimal waste. The Spoonflower fat quarters, they have a very large border section, which is where they do the printing and everything. That border section makes a perfect bias tape to go across these. Give me just a second and I will show you how I make my bias tape. I have used a lot of different bias tape makers in my life, and the Madame Sew is the one that I absolutely fell in love with. It comes in this lovely set, and there are even pins. There are 4 different sizes as well as the presser foot attachment, but this little awl is a game changer. Plus, the way it's designed. Most bias tape makers look like this, but this one is really set up quite intuitively. And the inclusion of the awl is worth it right there. So to make your own bias tape that I'll be using for the top of my spinning bag, all I'm going to do is I'm going to slide it in, and you want to make sure your tape is not wider than your, and look at that, as it comes out, it's perfectly folded. I was so excited. I was like, I'm going to be making all of my own bias tape now. And then I will just take the iron, and you want to make sure that you keep this piece here, because that's what's going to keep it feeding in evenly. And then I like to, as soon as it comes out the other side, I like to just hold it and pull it through. So effortless, I love it. And then I will set that aside. Now I'm not done yet, because I am going to go ahead and fold this over to make it a little bit easier to sew. Ta-da! Instant bias tape. I love it. So simple. I think I'll be making all of my own bias tape, because bias tape is so expensive. And I'll put everything back. I am going to go upstairs and sew this on very quickly, and then I will share with you how to finish the spinner's cloth. I will be right back. Okay, so now I have the bias tape on top of both of my sheep, which they are so adorable. So now putting this together, I'm just going to decide where the pockets are going to go down at one end, like so. Move this little guy. And the thing to remember is you always want right sides together, so the llamas will sit there. The sheep, I'm going to flip over like so. I will put the white on top. And for most of this, I've done a standard 5/8. Well, for the quilt squares, I used a 3/8 inch seam allowance. For everything else, I have been using the standard 5/8 inch seam allowance. So now I have all of my right sides together, and it's okay if your pockets don't exactly line up because they're on completely opposite sides. So it just kind of depends. I liked the shorter pocket and the fact that this balanced out to have 2 sheep on each side. Originally I had 3 sheep, but it made this pocket quite a bit deeper and I wasn't liking where it was sitting. So I went ahead and took off and went back to the 2 sheep, and that made it just a little bit shorter. So I am going to run upstairs. Now, the thing to remember, you'll want to pin around each side. I have left a bottom open. The one thing that you want to remember as you're sewing, of course, you need to leave a little bit open so you can turn your spinning cloth right side out, but don't do it on a corner. You always want to leave a little bit of space, not on a corner. And then when I sew around my corners, before I turn it inside out, I will be clipping off that corner so I get a sharper point and I don't have all of that excess fabric. So I will be right back to show you the finished spinning cloth. Well, along with having a bias tape maker, another tool that is really handy to have is a point turner. Knitting needle, chopstick, anything works. This is a bamboo one, which I really like, and it comes in especially handy to push out the corners of a piece of fabric. So I just need to find the actual corner. There we go. And then use this to push it out. And then I'm just going to drop it in when it gets down to the bottom. And every time I've done this, it's like I always look at this and I'm like, oh no, I did it wrong, only to realize that no, I haven't turned it all the way out. And the turner is down here. It just pops it right out. Hop over to the other side. This is also a really nice way to check your seams as well, to make sure that all of your seams have caught, which they have. Take it out. And so now I will iron. I'm going to go ahead and go over and I will iron this flat and then whip stitch this, but you can either whip stitch it by hand, or if you want, go ahead and do it on the machine as well. I am just going to do a really fine stitch along the bottom right there to finish it off. And there you have it. It is an incredibly quick project with the llamas on the dark side and the sheep on the light side. And the thing that I love about this is when not in use, it just easily folds into itself. Like so. And now I have another pocket should I want one, and I could put it in my carry-all bag if I chose to. So this was just a lot of stuff happening in January. I realized I didn't want to do a whole bunch of different shows. There were so many events that were happening in January, with the New Year on the 1st, the Chinese New Year, with it being the year of the rabbit. I wanted to celebrate that in a couple different ways. And because this is the first year that I actually took 12 days off and started spinning again, I wanted to do something just a little bit different for Distaff Day. So I created a special bat, and I will get back to spinning those, as well as showcasing how a distaff is used on a spinning wheel, which I don't think I've done. Feel free to put in the comments, oh yeah, that was episode such and such. I don't think I have though. I think because I do most of my spinning on support spindles now, it's been a while since I've actually used a distaff with my spinning wheel. So I've added that to my intentions for this year as well. I plan on spending a little bit more time with my wheels as the year pans out. One last thing, if you are interested in spin-alongs, most of the people, or most of the spinners that I've talked to, have really liked using these with their support spindles. And so I wanted to also talk a little bit about the peahens spin-along for this year. It's a little bit different than traditional spin-alongs, which only last for 1 month. This spin-along is going to span 5 months, with the option for a get-together at the end of it. January is all about preparing your fiber and finding a pattern. February, is the spinning. February, March is spinning. April, May is creating whatever it is that you have chosen for this spin along. And then at the Maryland Sheep and Wool Festival in May, we will be having a spin in hosted by the Peahen, where you'll have the opportunity to show and share what you created during the Peahen's Spin-tentional spin-along. And I thought that tied in beautifully with setting intentions for this year. So I'm absolutely going to join in on the Spin-tentional spin-along. I have my fiber prepared. Now I need to start doing some sampling and get ready and actually jump in and do some spinning, which I will actually be doing on some of my wheels. I'll be using support spindles as well as my wheels for this particular spin-along, and I will be using my Year of the Rabbit spinning cloth to help me see the fibers that I spin just a little bit easier. As always, I hope this was informational. There wasn't a lot of spinning in this one. I kind of jumped in with the sewing aspects because I really think that it's important to find fun and unique ways to use those fabric scraps that you might have lying around. Try to minimize the waste in your sewing projects as much as you possibly can. So feel free to share with me in the comments section what you have created. I do love reading those comments. As always, thank you so much for tuning in. As always, happy sewing.